The sea wind off Blackwater Bay prowled the battlements of Dragonstone like some half-starved beast, gnawing at the torches until the flames shivered and guttered. Shireen Baratheon stood on the parapet beneath the leering stone dragons, listening to their hollow growls as they drank the night air. She hugged her threadbare mantle tight, fingers tracing the familiar roughness of the grayscale that blotched her left cheek and crept toward her jaw. The chill did not bother her so much as the taste of smoke. Dragonfire smoke. From the pyres her father's red priests built in Lawloress honor. Smoke had become a second skin at Dragonstone, sour and unyielding. She wondered whether it would cling to her in distant places as stubbornly as the scales on her face. Below, in the yard beyond the maester's rookery, Davos Seaworth paced a restless line, his ragged cloak snapping like a sail about to part from its mast. Moonlight silvered the stump where his fingers had been. He glanced upward, searching the ramparts until his eyes snagged on Shireen's small lone shadow. He lifted a hand, 2 quick waves urgent, then still, and she felt her pulse thrum like a drum beneath a doomed king's march. Davos was never careless, not since Blackwater. If he signaled in the open, something was wrong. She descended the narrow stairs, slippers grating against the damp stone. The door at the base yawned open before she touched it. Maester Pylus waited in the corridor, a single candle trembling in his grip. His chain quivered too, copper links brushing against iron. "Come, princess." His voice betrayed neither warmth nor fear, only haste. "You must go with Ser Davos. Now." "Go where?" Even as she asked, dread coiled through her gut like a shy eel. "Somewhere safer than here." He offered no more, pressing the candle into her hands. "I taught you letters so you might read the world, my lady. Read this night clearly and do not speak until Ser Davos bids it." In the yard, the Onion Knight's breath smoked in pale ribbons. A leather satchel hung from his belt, bulging. He knelt to Shireen's eye level. "You trust me?" he whispered. "With all my heart. Then you must trust me enough to fear me. I'm stealing you, little princess." The words flattened the world. Shireen blinked, waiting for laughter that never came. Stealing or rescuing? But her father's hall stood only 10 paces away. The red priest's fires crackled within. Any noise might stir them. She nodded. Davos's smile was a sad scar, thin and honest. He wrapped a sailor's cloak round her shoulders, tugged the hood low, and led her past the stables to a postern gate rarely opened. It scraped on rusted hinges, exhaling the reek of kelp and wet stone. Beyond, a narrow path zigzagged down the cliffs toward a cove where a Drummond bobbed without lanterns, all but invisible in the moon-dappled swell. They boarded by rope ladder, the deck dark save for a single shielded lamp. Davos guided her to a cramped cabin. "South, then east," he murmured to the helmsman. "Volantis first, if we outrun her father's ships." The helmsman grunted assent, and the ship's oars slipped into the water like knives into meat. Dragonstone's black silhouette drifted astern, its volcanic peak a ragged fong against the stars. Shireen pressed her forehead to the porthole, afraid to blink, lest the fortress vanish with the last of her childhood. In the quiet hours before dawn, Davos entered the cabin with a flask of watered wine and a heel of bread. "Eat," he said. "Seize Kinder on a full belly." He sat opposite, the lamplight stroking new seams of weariness across his face. "Your father, he means to use you, Shireen." The red woman saw something in her flames, power that sleeps in your blood. "I do not claim to understand it, but I will not let them burn another child." Another! She remembered the names whispered in the passages at night. Edric Storm, bastard boy of King Robert, spirited away across the narrow sea under Davos's very hands. "Did you steal him too?" "Aye, and I'll steal 1,000 more if it spares them the agony of fire." He broke the bread, placed the larger piece in her palm. "Shadowbinding folk dwell in Ashai. They say they work great sorcery with darkness itself. If you hide among them, no lord, no priest, no king will find you. Shadows answer only to night." The words sounded like a riddle, but the promise of distance hummed within her skull. Farther than Dragonstone, farther even than the stories of Summerhall and Storm's End, Ashai lay at the end of the world, where the map dissolved into smudged ink. Shireen swallowed a mouthful of bread, dry as ash. Days blurred into salt and spray. Davos kept her below deck whenever sails appeared on the horizon. He taught her knots to soothe restless fingers, sailors' prayers to ease nightmares, and codes of lantern flashes that spoke across black water. At night, he read to her from a tattered copy of the Jade Compendium, tales of shy maidens who married gods of the river and repaid them with pearls. But sometimes, when the moon was a mere whisker, he read nothing at all, staring into the dark as if searching for his soul. They reached the markets of Volantis beneath a sky the color of rust. Shireen gaped at the black walls and the elephant towers, the red priests in their striped robes preaching by the fires of the long bridge. Yet Davos lingered only long enough to barter for silk and saffron, goods the Ashai prized, then booked passage east on a trading cog crewed by dusky men whose eyes glittered like flint. He kissed Shireen's brow before handing her to the captain's care. "Stay quiet," he murmured. "Names are nets. Throw yours away. Will I see you again? When the sun rises in the west and sets in the east, perhaps." His lopsided grin tried for mirth and mist. "But know this, you are no prisoner to fate, Shireen. Ashai is a forge. Steel or shatter, choice will be yours." The cog slipped its moorings. From the stern, she watched Davos dwindle until he was a smudge upon the quay, a candle sputtering in fog. She pressed knuckles against her mouth, but no tears came. Grief was too large, a cloak still being sewn. Weeks turned to months upon the Jade Sea. The captain, Cavo the Quiet, escorted her each dawn to the prow where he burned incense from turquoise jars. Smoke curled around Shireen's cheeks, disguising the grayscale's ridges like soft mist over grim stones. Cavo spoke little, but his mate, an ancient woman with oil-black hair, taught Shireen the language of ET, gifting her syllables shaped like bells. "Words are charms," the old mate croaked. "Say them proper, you bind the wind. Say them false, the wind will choke you." Shireen practiced in secret, shaping foreign vowels until her tongue felt born anew. She cut her hair to the shoulders with a fruit peeler's knife, discarded her Baratheon greens for a robe the hue of crushed mulberries. She traced the grayscale's border nightly, measuring whether the stone advanced. Slept for now, but not forever. They sighted the ruins of Valyria, a league of smoking rocks and red water, then skirted south, hugging coastlines where fisherfolk lived in stilted shacks and sang to sharks. Finally, one dawn, jagged pillars of black stone loomed from a mist the color of old bone. The breakers of Ashai. Ships crawled between them like beetles entering a crypt. Ashai the shadow swallowed daylight whole. Even midday felt like twilight there, the sky bruised by secrets. Cavo's cog moored at the river Ash, dark as ink, oil-slick and sluggish. No gulls shrieked, no children laughed. Merchants whispered rather than haggled, weighing gold in crooked hands. Everyone wore masks, cloth or lacquer, as though faces were dangerous knowledge. A woman awaited Shireen at the gangplank. Tall, draped in robes woven from shimmering midnight threads, she bore a mask of polished obsidian. Iam Guha. The name slipped into Shireen's mind like a whisper sliding beneath a door. Come. The apostles of night have dreamed you. Her voice carried no echo, yet it filled every corner of the pier. Shireen followed across streets paved in black basalt veined with ghostlight. Braziers burned pale blue flame. Shadows writhed against walls as if eager to escape. They passed a temple with no windows, only arrow slits, from which emanated a chant that thrummed against Shireen's ribs. In an alley, a blindfolded man painted glyphs upon his own skin in blood the color of rust. No one paused. Wonder was cheap in Ashai. Within a courtyard of dying olive trees, Kaith removed her mask. Her face was unremarkable, neither young nor old, beautiful nor plain, but her eyes glowed as though reflecting distant fires Shireen could not see. "You carry a dragon's shadow, child of Storm's End." Kaith's breath fogged the air though it was not cold. And dragon's fire melts truth from lies. I carry only scars. Shireen lifted her chin, but her voice trembled. The stone upon your face protects you from pity, from vanity. But deeper stones bind your blood. Kaith brushed knuckles across Shireen's brow. In Ass High we set such stones to song. A bell chimed somewhere beyond the courtyard. One deep note that seemed to last too long. Kaith guided Shireen into a tower whose halls wound inward like a snail's shell. Candles lined each turn, their flames black rather than gold. They cast light yet no heat, and their smoke smelled of cedar. In a circular chamber, a pool lay like a mirror of pure onyx. Kaith dipped a ladle, handing Shireen water that gleamed strangely. Drink. The river accepts only those who carry darkness inside. Shireen's lips brushed the liquid cool, metallic, tasting faintly of ash and honey. Vision blurred, then sharpened until she saw the weave of Kaith's robe, threads snagged by invisible thorns. The chamber breathed. Shadows gathered at the periphery, shaping themselves into women with burning eyes, men with mouths stitched shut, creatures with too many arms. None spoke. They bowed as one. You are not Baratheon here, Kaith intoned. Choose an Ashai name. Leave the storms behind. Shireen thought of the songs Davos hummed, the way the word moon lingered in his throat like yearning. Selene, she whispered. Selene of no house. Selene. Shadows rippled in approval. The river knows you. Thus began her apprenticeship beneath Ashai's poisoned stars. She slept in a cell whose walls sweated pitch at dusk. Each dawn, Kaith instructed her in tongues older than Valyrian, the language of shadow and smoke, sounds that felt like needles against the teeth. She learned to grind obsidian into dust, to mix it with chalk and oil, and paint sigils that drank torchlight. She memorized the 99 breaths that silence a heart, the 13 cuts that free a slave from fear. Yet for all their dread, the lessons moved slowly, measured by lantern drips, never rushing. Mastery demanded patience. Haste bred only twisted echoes. Shireen, now Selene, spent an entire month learning to breathe without thinking of breath. Another month passed tracing the circle that leads to the sphere without ever lifting the stylus from parchment. Failure was rewarded with repetition, not scorn. In this, she found a strange kindness. One evening, Kaith led her beyond the city walls to the banks of the shadow, where the water lapped like tar. Fog rolled off the river, swallowing the moon. Tonight, said Kaith, you will bind your first shadow. She produced a candle stub and a length of shattered glass. Stand within the circle of salt. Name the fear you wish to master and offer it to the dark. Shireen's knees quivered as she stepped into the ring. The grayscale tingled, as though aware of some ancient kinship with night. She closed her eyes. I fear fire, she whispered. Flames that devour screaming children, that paint Father's faces with zeal. Good. Kaith touched the candle to the ground beside Shireen's heel. Now wait until the candle dies. Do not move. Do not speak. Hours slithered past. The candle's guttering cast Shireen's shadow tall against the fog, elongating until it seemed a separate creature stretching away toward the horizon. When the last coal blinked out, darkness pressed against her skin like wet velvet, terrible, yet velvet still. She heard nothing, felt only the pounding of her blood. Yet when her eyes adjusted, her shadow no longer copied her. Stood apart, head inclined, waiting. Speak to it, Kaith murmured from somewhere beyond. Tell it what to do. Be still, Shireen said. The shadow obeyed. She felt no triumph, only a quiet heartbreak, as if she had cut away a piece of herself and given it a cage. Kaith's palm settled on Shireen's shoulder. The first binding is the easiest. The second may cost you tears. The third, blood. Each grows dearer. Remember, you trade pieces of your soul for power. Never forget the weight of what you spend. Seasons drifted without seasons. In Ass High, leaves did not fall. Flowers did not bloom. Time announced itself by what withered inside the heart. Shireen exchanged childlike wonder for stern resolve. The river's ink seeped into her marrow until her thoughts whispered in its cadence. She could shape shadows into birds that perched upon her wrist, or knives that hovered before her foes. Petty conjurings, but hers. Yet she never summoned fire. She left that to Melisandre and the priests of R'hllor, far away across endless seas. Sometimes, when the temple bells droned, she walked the market alone, cloaked and masked. She listened to the thousand tongues of traitors, Lyseni gossip of wars in Westeros, Carthene boasts of dragon queens. One peddler claimed that Stannis Baratheon, king of the Narrow Sea, sought his daughter across every port from Pentos to Ash. He offered chests of rubies and the pardon of Storm's End to anyone who returned her, alive or ash. Another swore the king had perished at Winterfell, his army broken by the Boltons. At these rumors, Shireen felt a deep aching hollow where her father's stern pride had once lived. She neither hoped for his life nor prayed for his death. She merely listened, gathering each tale like a shard of glass and hiding it in her sleeve. In the 5th year of her exile, though years in Ash were measured by eclipse and earthquake rather than calendars, Kaith summoned her to the Mirrorpool chamber once more. Shadows lined the room, silent as always. "The winds speak of a golden fleet sailing east," Kaith said. "On board is a woman in red who commands flames with a glance. She follows whispers of a lost girl whose blood bears king's power. Melisandre." Shireen tasted ash on her tongue. "She'll find me, if you remain." Kaith touched Shireen's cheek. Not the scarred side, but the unmarked, as if blessing what remained soft. "Your training nears a fork. Continue and you will belong to Shadow forever. Or you may choose the half-lit path. Return west, wield what you have learned, and shape men's fates before they burn you." "I fled the pyre only to meet its smoke." Shireen's voice cracked. "If I leave, the Red Woman will try to light it anew. And if you stay," Kaith said, "you surrender the dawn. Shadows thrive in night, but night alone is hollow." There was a third path unspoken, to seek Davos. A father in everything but blood, waiting perhaps in some harbor, forever scanning masts for a child he saved. The thought warmed her chest like embers. That night, Shireen Selene packed what little she owned. A strip of dragonglass dagger, a scroll of star maps inked on cured eel skin, and a lacquer mask painted cobalt. She traced a sigil upon her palm with crushed obsidian, the mark of safe passage across the shadow. In the courtyard, Kaith awaited. She laid a bundle at Shireen's feet. A cloak of woven midnight, a small purse of golden dragons, and a ring shaped like a crescent moon. "For the storms you still carry," she said. "Ash does not cling to its children. It releases them unto the dark they deserve." Shireen bowed, the dusty courtyard swallowing her tears. She stepped through the gates and onto the river's pier, where a narrow skiff waited, black sails furled. The boatman's eyes were seraph green, the color of the dawn that never touched Ash. Without a word, he raised the sail. Wind stirred, fragrant with salt instead of ash, and the skiff glided toward the river mouth, toward ghostlit seas. Shireen looked back once. The city's braziers flickered within the mist. Shadows writhed like living tapestries bidding farewell. She touched the ring on her finger. In the moon's mirror upon the water, her reflection fractured, half child, half shadow, all hers. The skiff nosed beyond the breakers. Stars blossomed overhead, fierce and innumerable. She breathed deep, tasting freedom and fear in equal measure. Somewhere westward, beyond trackless leagues, fires still burned. Fires that consumed innocence and stoked power. But she carried night within her now, and night could cloak or kill. She whispered to her shadow, trailing upon the waves, "Be my cloak." It folded around her like sable wings. Dawn, when it finally found her on the open sea, seemed pale as candle wax, but it found her nonetheless. And Shireen Selene looked upon the horizon with eyes that mirrored both wax and flame, soul tethered neither to Dragonstone's smoke nor Asheye's gloom, but to a path uncharted, where Shadowbinders carved daylight into their own shape, and children once doomed to burn might yet rise as the evening star. From behind the skiff, the river's darkness unwound in silken threads, stitching itself into the hem of her cloak. She did not turn back again. So began the journey of the shadow-forged girl toward a world that had forgotten her name but would learn to fear her whispers, for whispers can stir embers, and embers may choose to smolder or blaze. The skiff cleaved the oily waves for 3 nights before sighting a lantern-specked merchantman lying at anchor beneath the lip of a basalt promontory. Its hull was striped saffron and lime. Its sails hung slack like folded wings, but iron studs gleamed along her rail, hinting at teeth beneath the paint. When the boatman hailed, a figure leaned over the side. Short, wrapped in a patchwork cloak of peacock feathers, face round and whiskered. He called himself Lassaro Kellen, quartermaster of the Free Cog Zephyr, and he spoke a trader's Valyrian that tasted of honeyed wine. For 2 bars of gold, he offered passage anywhere between Karth and Volantis, no questions but many stories. Shireen paid from Kaith's purse without bartering. Gold was weight, secrecy heavier. A rope ladder rose like a serpent from the skiff. She climbed, cloak whipping in the salt wind. Deckboards groaned beneath her slippers, and sailors turned curious eyes until Lassaro snapped an order. They melted back to duties, hauling crates of saffron, rolling rain barrels, checking crossbow pulleys that hid beneath canvas. The captain, a severe Giscari woman named Minora Pauez, accepted Shireen's silver crescent ring as token of guest right and assigned her a berth beneath the bowsprit, close to the Zephyr's heart where ballast stones thudded like distant drums. The first night out of the shadow, Shireen dreamed she walked along a corridor of mirrors. In each reflection her grayscale crawled farther, scaling brow and cheek, turning skin into cracked marble. She touched the stone and felt warmth beneath, as though the scale shielded a silent flame. When she woke, sweat glazed her temples though the hold was cool. She whispered the 7th silent breath Kaith had taught, calming the tremor in her bones, then fashioned a rough ward in the air. A curve, a hook, a closure. The darkness in the hold recoiled, edges softening. Days lengthened. The Jade Sea surrendered to the 1,000 islands of Noth and Wallano, where peach blossom petals drifted on the wind like snowflakes longing for colder skies. Minora permitted Shireen on deck only at dawn and dusk, yet even those moments dazzled. Flying fish arced through scarlet light, fins iridescent. Once, dolphins paced the Zephyr's prow, their breath puffing silver. Shireen knelt, whispered "swim swift," and loosed a sliver of shadow that skimmed over their sleek backs. The creatures shuddered as though sensing a chill, then vanished beneath. Power thrilled her nerves. A bowstring drawn, never loosed. Lassaro took to visiting her berth, spinning yarns while fussing with a bone dice cup. He spoke of Tolos where priests gelled their tongues to bless silken moths, of a hidden pirate port in the stormlands of the summer sea where exiles paid in tears to dream of lost homes. He called ass high that great mouth sucking brave hearts dry, and laughed through crooked teeth when she asked if he had visited. "I am no brave heart," he said, "and my blood is too thin to tempt its thirst." Yet his eyes glittered when she recounted fogs that blotted the sun, temples that sang in stone. One gray morning, screeching gulls heralded port at Talon, a lawless finger reef north of the Basilisk Isles. Minora bartered water barrels for fire arrows and gave shore leave in staggered watches. Shireen remained aboard, but she felt the shift in currents. Deckwood relaxing, ropework sighing, men's voices loosening with rum.
Suspicion drifted like tar smoke.
At dusk, as she practiced the circle that births the sphere upon a scrap of parchment, a sailor named Curran slouched into view, eyeing her strokes. "What language that?" he asked, swaying. "A child's game." She crumpled the parchment. "You write like priests of the Red Bitch." His breath reeked of palm wine. "We lost men at Claw Isle to her fire. I smell the same stench on you." Shireen's pulse flickered. She considered silence, the 9th breath, but the man stepped closer, knuckles whitening on a belaying pin. Reflex surged. She whispered a binding. 3 clicks of tongue, 1 sharp exhale. A sliver of darkness peeled from the hold's corner, coiled round Curran's shadow, and pinned it flat. The sailor jerked as if sudden weights shackled his ankles. Fear widened his eyes. Sweat beaded his lip. "You'll speak this to no one," she said softly. "In 3 breaths you walk away. The 4th breath." She let promise hang like a blade. He nodded, trembling. She released the shadow. Curran stumbled aft, muttering prayer to Mother Royne. Guilt prickled, yet deeper still was cold triumph. She had defended herself without fire or blade. She told the darkness, "Enough," and it slid back to the planks. 3 nights later, cries rang across the water. Moonlight revealed a ram-proud galley flying crimson sails spattered with a golden heart. Valentine Triarchs. The Zephyr's ringing bells summoned crew to arms. Minora cursed trade taxes she could not pay. Shireen watched through a hawse hole as grapnels arced, thudded into deck rail. Valentine soldiers, red cloaks snapping, clambered aboard. Minora's archers loosed one volley before a shout silenced them. "Harm no levy ship and live!" A woman strode across the planks, wrapped in scarlet veils shimmering like coals. Melanira of R'hllor, envoy to the Eastern Triarchs. Flames embroidered her sleeves, and her eyes shone molten gold in torchlight. Shireen felt heat stroke the air, felt her own shadow tremble. She pressed against the hull, masking presence. Yet she dared listen. "Among your passengers," Melanira declared, "hides a thief of the Lord's chosen blood, young, touched by stone. Surrender her and the Triarchs will forget your tax debt." Minora spat. "No stowaways here. Search and be gone." Boots stamped overhead. Sailors' curses bled between floorboards. Shireen ran breathless calculations. She could bind 3, perhaps 5 shadows before exhaustion broke her focus. But flame priests wield fire as extension of breath. Darkness withers before their light. She needed concealment, not contest. She unlatched her berth sea chest, slipped inside among cedar chips and bundled sails. She whispered a drape of absence, the 12th unbreath. Her own shadow flattened against the lids inside, melding into tar. Stillness coated her skin like wax. Soldiers stomped below, work lamps blazing. Voices barked inventory. Salt pork, barley, cochineal. Then one voice, sharper, female, "Search there." Footsteps approached. The chest's lid creaked, rose a hairbreadth. Bright flare sliced darkness. Heat pricked her cheek. She visualized stone. Dragonstone basalt that had imprisoned her childhood, letting its chill bleed outward. Melanira's candle flame guttered once, twice, then steadied. Empty. The priestess sounded irritated. "Prince in dust, though. Someone crouched here." "A rat nest," replied a soldier. "We're wasting moonlight." The chest slammed shut. Boots retreated. Oars splashed soon after, and the Zephyr's deck tilted as the galley cast off. Shireen waited 100 heartbeats before pushing the lid. When she emerged, Lassaro knelt, eyes wide. "Gods," he breathed. "They hunted you." "Not me," she lied. "Someone else." Lassaro studied her cloak's moving hem, where a thin tendril of living night curled and uncurled. He scratched his beard. "The sea is wide, little fish," he murmured, "but nets tangle in strange currents." He left her a waterskin and a slice of pomegranate. The seeds gleamed like garnets. She forced them past a throat gone desert dry. Minora changed course at dawn, steering northwest across calmer seas. 3 days out, a storm wall rose, a bruise spanning horizon to zenith. Sails reefed, deck cleared. Shireen sensed the storm's heart before thunder spoke. Pressure squeezed her skull, static lifted hair. In the hold, barrels clanged, rats squealed. She drew a chalk sigil on the bulkhead, an open eye inside a closed palm. "Hold this ship and all souls," she whispered. "Accept one shadow." She sliced her thumb with the dragonglass knife, fed a drop into the chalk. The eye seemed to blink. The hull's groan quieted. When the storm struck, waves hammered like warhammers. The Zephyr yawed, but did not capsize. Lightning illuminated curtains of rain, and between each flash Shireen saw silhouettes dancing above the mast. Slender figures woven of mist and spark. Storm spirits, Kaith would have named them. She felt them pluck at her ward, testing. She reinforced the circle, chanting through chattering teeth until her voice frayed. Finally wind fell, rain softened, and dawn bled pale rose across tranquil swells. Sailors whispered of luck, but Lassaro left a skein of silk at her berth in thanks. They reached Volantis half a moon later. Summer heat simmered, and the city stank of fishgut and tiger's piss. Black walls loomed, ancient as Valeria's pride. Elephant banners snapped atop towers. Minora bribed harbor masters to dock at a disused quay near the Spice Quarter, sparing Shireen customs inspection. She intended to disembark and seek stealth across the long bridge to the Shadowbinder's enclave rumored in the Shadow Market. But at the gangplank, Lassaro pressed a sealed scroll into her hand. "Captain's ledger shows you bound west," he said quietly. "But west is many worlds. If you ever need coin or blades, present this to House Paz factors in Pentos. They owe me favors. They'll owe you." Shireen thanked him, tucking the scroll beneath her sash. She stepped into the crush of Volantine humanity, a tide of tiger stripes, elephant tusk pendants, red priests preaching at every arch. Cloaked, masked, she drifted like smoke, yet eyes lingered, ass-high robbed complexion. She was winter pale amid sun-kissed throngs. Her scarred cheek drew pity or disgust. Both were dangers. She adopted the low-born stoop, eyes to ground. Still she felt hunted. In a stall beneath a cracked granite colossus, she purchased ink, quills, and a leather-bound journal with her first silver stag. She wrote nightly in a rented garret above a perfumer, recalling training drills, noting shadow theorems, listing every rumor of Melisandre or Stannis she overheard in wine sinks. Stannis slain by treachery at Winterfell. Stannis besieging White Harbor. Stannis crossing back to Dragonstone with cell sails. Truth scattered like dry leaves. 2 weeks passed. One sultry evening, as lanterns flickered along the long bridge, Shireen heard a familiar laugh in the bazaar below her garret. A rough, sincere bark. Davos Seaworth, unmistakable. Heart hammering, she flew to the shutters. There he was, grayer, thinner, but whole, bargaining with a satchel peddler for parchment. She nearly shouted his name. Caution strangled the cry. The last Davos knew, she was Ashai-bound under Cavo's care. If the Red Priest shadowed him, a reunion could kill them both. She followed from rooftops, stepping over broken tiles, using the fourth silent breath to lighten feet. Davos wove through alleys toward the waterfront.
Twilight deepened, torches sputtered.
She drew nearer, hunger for home warring with fear. A cloaked figure intercepted Davos outside a shuttered tavern. The sign read the broken chain. Candlelight spilled through slats, revealing the stranger's too vibrant red robe. Shireen froze behind a rain barrel. Melisandre? No, the robes bore orange flame patterns, not golden. Still a priest. The man bowed. Davos stiffened. They spoke in harsh whispers. Shireen edged closer along brick parapet until words floated clear. "King's daughter lives," the priest murmured. "Our fires show her in shadow and ship smoke. We thought she sailed east, but ash signs now swirl west. If you think to use her again," Davos growled, "I'll cut you." His hand rested on dagger hilt. "We seek only to guide. The great other moves pieces across the board. Without her, night will devour dawn. You preach to wrong ears." Davos spat. "So be it." The priest's eyes glimmered amber. "But hear this. A Shadowbinder's mark stains her aura. Darkness shields her now. When fire meets that dark, storm will reign where stone once stood. Warn her, smuggler, if you still claim love." He melted back into gloom. Davos exhaled shakily, gazing toward the river where lanterns bobbed. Shireen retreated, pulse roaring. The priest saw her shield. That meant Melisandre or her allies studied the flames with new hunger. She could not risk meeting Davos here. It would paint a target upon him. Yet abandoning him undone felt worse than chainmail on naked flesh. That night, she wrote him a letter in Davos's own smuggler cipher. simple rearrangements of vowels, knots, and merchant slang, explaining she was alive, safe, learning powers to counter fire, and urging him to sail for Pentos and await her. She signed with the nickname he'd given her at Storm's End, Little Lime, and sealed it with a drop of her blood, the old ward that protected letters from prying eyes. Before dawn, she bribed a fishmonger's boy to deliver it to the black-sailed skiff moored under the bridge of Volandaris where Davos rented berths. She watched from arches above, saw Davos accept the scroll, break into tears he wiped upon torn sleeve. Then he boarded his cutter, sails unfurled, and tide bore him away downstream. Relief and sorrow mingled bitter. With Davos gone, Shireen planned her own departure. Volantis bristled with red priests. Every sermon risked exposing her. She sought a caravan traveling the demon road through the Dothraki Sea. A mad detour, but fire priests seldom braved horselord domains. In the caravanserai north of the city, she met Nikos the Narok, master of a chain-linked wagon train carrying Miraglass to Qohor. He demanded triple fare. She paid double and laid silent compulsion on his shadow so he'd forget the count. The desert of grass stretched unbroken, green waves whispering of lost kingdoms. The wagons creaked, axles sighed beneath nasal horns. At dusk, fires kindled. Chit-chat in 15 tongues. Carthene drawl, Bravosi bark, hushed Yiddish. Shireen kept to herself, practicing small shadows along wagon canvas. Stylized cats chasing painted moths. Children giggled. She smiled once, then stifled it. Joy might anchor her here when journey demanded motion. On the 12th day, hoofbeats thundered. Dothraki Khalasar, azure banners, silver bells. Nikos panicked. Drivers drew short bows. Shireen felt fear ripple through the caravan like wind across wheat. She inhaled, swelling senses outward. Shadows of riders flared long across the grass, slender as lashes. She chose a knot of 5 nearest the vanguard, whispered bind break bind in the old tongue. Their shadows tangled. 3 riders' horses reared, screaming. Confusion rippled, momentum faltered. The Khalasar parted around the wagons like tide around rock. Superstition stronger than bloodlust. Death's scent faded. The drivers called her grass witch in awe, but she let rumor explain what lips must not. Midway to Qohor, plague struck. A bloody flux that felled drovers, rotted water barrels. Shireen nursed the dying with herbs gleaned from the compendium. Men raved in fever, muttering of fires, stone maidens, black rivers. One old guardsman, eyes glazed, clutched her wrist and rasped, "You are fire's bride." She soothed him until he slept forever. When they limped into Qohor's dark woods, half the wagons were ash, yet those who lived named her shadow healer. Qohor's smiths, renowned for reforging Valyrian steel, offered coin for such a sorceress, but she declined. Restless, she booked passage aboard a Royner pole boat bound downriver toward Norvos. In the dense wolf wood along the river, fog coiled thick. Nights smelled of wet fur. She carried a lantern of smoke glass that made its own light, blue-cold, shapeless, coaxed from a binding taut in ass-high. Kept predators at bay, beasts and men. In the cloistered courts of Norvos, bell priests clanged bronze discs all hours. She traded a length of moonspun silk for maps of Westeros printed by Bravosi cartographers, coastlines curling like barbs in memory. Dragonstone marked there, Storm's End, a black sigil at Winterfell where legends say a shadow killed a king's brother. She touched the parchment, felt a shiver pass from ink into bone. Home, once concept, now caution. Rumors of the war had grown wilder. Bolton bastards holding the north. Lannister gold bled dry. A dragon queen crossing Slaver's Bay astride scaled doom. Red priests preached her advent, proclaiming her the Lord's anointed. Shireen pondered prophecy. Prince or princess that was promised. Did they think the dragon queen or her own gray-scaled self? She had read the dusty scrolls at Dragonstone. Azor, a high reborn, shall wake dragons from stone. Her cheek bore stone. Her blood carried flames that priests coveted. Perhaps prophecy simply fed on suffering, twisting any victim into morsel. In Norvos, she encountered the scholar mage Denio of Ilhar, who lectured in cobbled squares about the mathematics of moonshadows. His equations mirrored some of Kaith's sigils. Curious, she introduced herself as Celine, student of night geometries. They debated harmonic proportions beneath ivy-strewn colonnades. Denio argued that shadows possessed mass in the spectral realm, convertible to heat if collapsed. Shireen countered with Ashai praxis that shadow mass is memory, and memory cannot incinerate, it calcifies. Their ruminations drew small crowds. Coin clinked at their feet. She felt intellectual fire, clean, unsullied by lawless flame. Denio offered to sponsor her admission into the Guild of Dialectic, but she declined again. Each anchor invited pursuit. One frostbitten dawn, as she rehearsed binding the sound of a crow's wingbeat, a message arrived by owl. Davos's sharp script spread across sailcloth. Little Lime, Pento's less safe than hoped. Red priests by ears, sailing west to Lys under false flag. Meet me only if sure. Trust wind and tide but never fire. Your smuggler. A lily stamp marked the wax, his private sign of urgency. Fear knifed her gut. The priests tightened their web. She left Norvos that hour on a river galley, bound for Bravos. The Titan loomed in mist, gates clanged open, and she threaded pirate-peopled canals until finding berth at an inn called the Silent Coin. There she traded illusions to act in a mummer's early winter pageant. Wove living silhouettes across stage screens while actors relayed tales of the doom. The Bravosi delighted, and coin flowed. Yet, after each performance, she felt hollowness. Entertainment cheapened craft. Shadows meant for survival twisted into parlor tricks. She slipped away after second show, leaving wages behind. In a bookstall beneath the purple of the moon pool, she found a battered tome, Children of the Night, a treatise on Shadowbinders, penned by Archmaester Marwyn of the Citadel. Flipping pages, she read unsettling theories. Shadowbinding requires sacrifice of self. The grayscale, once contagious, can be harnessed to bind not merely absence of light but the absence of life. She felt bile rise. She imagined her father's eyes if he ever saw her now, saw the cracks along her skin widen each time she drew power too deeply. In a mirror, she noted new flecks at her temple, dormant but waiting. She purchased the book, hid it. Winter winds swept across Bravo's harbor like serrated knives. Ragman's harbor froze at edges. Beggars huddled near braziers. Shireen prepared bound heat coals to keep frost from lungs, distributing them to children for smiles. Yet warmth attracted curiosity. A zealot of R'hllor confronted her at Canal Bridge, praising her gift of fire. She corrected him, knight's craft. He grew agitated, preaching the Lord's truth, until she dismissed him with a shadow wink, literal wink. His shadow eyelid drooped, mirroring an unseen malady. The man fled screaming. She knew then flight could not continue forever. Running built longer trails for hunters to sniff. She required allies capable of war against priests. In Bravos existed the kindly man's faceless order, the Iron Bank, the Sea Lord's navy, but each demanded debts heavier than friendship. Davos alone offered unconditional love, but he was mortal and unarmed against fire prophets. She needed knowledge deeper than Kaith's riddles. Perhaps at the Citadel in Old Town, where chains of archmaesters held lore unrevealed to common petitioners. If she could don false identity there, glean scrolls on light and shadow interplay, she might craft weapons of pure night strong enough to quench flame. Old Town meant crossing back into Westeros. Danger soared, red priests embedded in every port. Sparrows roamed convicting witchcraft. Bolton banners north, Lannisters south, Ironborn reaving coasts. Yet home soil promised something intangible, roots of her soul, maybe, or destiny. She booked passage on the Storm Chaser, a sleek Lysine galley smuggling saffron and Myrish lace to the arbor. The captain, Colleen Sandaris, required each passenger to row night shifts. Shireen accepted, shoulders aching after first bell, palms blistered raw. She murmured small pain wards, but refused larger spells. Strength must temper body as well as spirit. Gulls announced landfall at the arbor's amber cliffs where vineyards drooped heavy under autumn mists. Colleen anchored in a secret cove. Shireen slipped ashore with a satchel, forging inland along goat tracks. She avoided towns, sheltering in abandoned shepherd huts, reading Marwyn's treatise by candlestub. It warned, those who feed life into shadow risk the gray kiss, scales creeping inward toward heart until it stills mid-beat. She touched her chest, imagined skin turning to tombs.
Tone.
Resolve steeled. She would master control or cease conjuring. At a crossroads shrine to the Seven, she encountered a troop of poor fellows under a ragged preacher named Brother Joram. They fed orphans, mended barns, preached mercy. Joram welcomed her to the cookfire despite mask. She offered what healing she could, char salve, fever wards. In exchange, she learned of Westeros' scars. King Tommen dead, Queen Marjorie imprisoned, High Sparrow slain mysteriously. Some say by a giant knight's mailed fist. The north boiled. Stannis' last loyal men scattered. Bolton's butchered by a sudden army bearing a flayed man banner half-blackened. Rumors blamed wildfire accidents. Lord Davos Seaworth had been seen near White Harbor pleading for ships. Vanished thereafter. Hearing her foster father's plight hammered dread into marrow, but she asked no questions. Brother Joram offered escort westward to Old Town. The poor fellows marched there seeking alms for shivering river lords. She traveled with them beneath brightening constellations. By winter's first snowflake, the high tower pierced horizon, a spear point of pale stone against pearl sky. Candle lights winked atop its crown. Shireen's breath caught. Within those vaults, scrolls older than Aegon's dream waited. They entered amid festival of candles. Sailors honoring the night lamp. Banners swirled. Bells tolled. Joram parted ways. Shireen rented chamber above Cobbler's shop and purchased a plain brown gown and veil. She studied Citadel admission policies. Any who presented a written recommendation from a sponsoring maester could enter as novice. Forgery required penmanship and official seal. She located Maester Valdrick's apothecary stall near Starry September. Respected but overworked. She feigned dizzy collapse near his booth. The maester, kind, tended her, diagnosing simple exhaustion. Over 2 days, she exploited his compassion, discussing her love of scholarship, quoting lines from Galtrey's observations on moon lore. Valdrick, impressed, offered to write referral should she truly wish study. She accepted with humble gratitude. The letter bore his copper ring imprint, enough. Still, crossing Citadel Gate meant surrendering anonymity. She prepared layered falsehoods. Name Serena Waters, natural daughter of a Lysini factor. Skill in inks, wish to forge scribe chain. Talent may grant her restricted lore copying privileges. Shadowcraft she would conceal beneath stacks of scrolls. She passed the examiners, a grizzled archmaester sniffing for falsehood. She masked scent of fear with subtle bind, a quieting of her own pulse so questions found no tremor. They accepted her as novice, assigning cell in the scribe's keep. Within days, she roamed labyrinthine libraries, copying treatises on optics, rare accounts of the long night. She memorized details of dragonglass properties, how obsidian can absorb heat then burst as light if etched along crystalline nodes. She envisioned forging daggers that drink fire, splitting priests' flames into harmless dusk. Her free hours each 7th day she spent atop the high tower's forgotten parapet, where lighthouse mirrors refracted waves into dancing ribbons. She traced sigils with fingertip on cold stone, binding sunlight into pockets of gloom, analyzing interplay. She confirmed Denio's theory, compressing a cast shadow between 2 mirrors built static charge. Release produced brief vacuum cold enough to quench embers. She named the technique Night Clasp. Suppose she scaled it, perhaps a circlet inscribed with mirrored silver channels could snuff bonfires at a gesture. Yet secrets cannot breathe forever in dungeons. One late hour, as she layered vellum to test multi-lumen filtration, footsteps echoed. Archmaester Tyland, master of light, approached, oil lamp flaring, his kindly face shadowed. "Novice Serena," he said, "your thirst for knowledge shines brighter than most, but brightness draws eyes. He lifted the scroll she copied earlier, Marwyn's forbidden treatise, open where margin now bore notations in Valyrian glyphs. "These glyphs," he murmured, "I recognize from accounts of Ass-High. Where did you learn them?" "My mother was translator in Lys," she lied. "Perhaps." His gaze lingered on the scales peaking near Vale Edge. "Yet I sense deeper tide. The Citadel grants many paths. Some lead to ruin." She met his eyes. "Knowledge itself is path. Ruin lies in how we walk." He smiled sadly. "Walk carefully, child." He replaced scroll, left. Shireen exhaled. Tylan suspected but offered counsel over castigation. She considered whether to trust him with truth, but truth is arrow. Once loosed, target unknown. Winter deepened. Word reached Old Town. Melisandre had set sail from Dragonstone, guided by visions of the Girl of Ash and Night. She preached alliance with a dragon queen rumored approaching Westeros. Fire and blood would cleanse the false winter. Panic tingled in Shireen's veins. She accelerated research, forging prototypes of night-clasp circlets using thin silver mirror shards sandwiched with smoky quartz. She tested on brazier coals, results promising. Embers darkened to gray husks, but larger flames resisted, flaring sideways instead of out. She needed Valyrian glass, a black mirror alloyed with magic, and forging required dragon heat or sorceress kiln. Old Town's smiths lacked capacity. Dragonstone had glass candles, legend said they burn with cold flame. Traveling back there seemed folly, yet maybe destiny loops like Ouroboros. One night, while she etched finer channels on a circlet, alarms clanged throughout Citadel. Novices scurried. Bells of starry September tolled discordant. Windows flared orange. Shireen ran to ramparts. Across Honeywine, the harbor burned. Ship masts engulfed, sails blazing like funeral pyres. On the riverbank, silhouettes in flame-red robes raised hands. Fire leapt in columns. Among them, a tall woman with pale skin afloat in heat shimmer, Melisandre. Even across half-mile, Shireen felt the woman's gaze turn, hawk-sharp, toward the parapet. Their eyes met, she knew. Smoke billowed. Screams of dockworkers carried. The high tower's mirrors flashed emergency beacons. Maesters marshaled bucket lines, but Lawloress flames roared with unnatural greed, scorching stone. Shireen sprinted down spiral stairs, clutching 2 night-clasp circlets. At a courtyard armory, she grabbed a shield polished like moonsteel. She bound her shadow to move silent while she stormed outside. At the river docks, embers whirled. Fisher skiffs snapped moorings. She advanced, whispering night-clasp activation. Mirror to shadow, shadow to void, void to peace. The circlet cooled, absorbing heat. A cone of darkness radiated, dimming flames within yards. Fire hissed angrily but withdrew like snake. Melisandre noticed. She strode across planks that smoldered yet did not char her silk. "Child," she called, voice music of hearth and holocaust. "You were meant for pure fire." "I choose my fire," Shireen replied. She raised the shield, its mirror face catching torchlight, feeding nightclasp. Flame reaching for her sputtered. Melisandre's eyes glowed red. "You wear night like armor, but night is absence. Our Lord is presence. He will devour the dark that opposes dawn. Dawn cannot exist without night." Philosophy ended. Sorcery began. Melisandre hurled a globe of living fire. Shireen pivoted shield. Nightclasp gulped blaze, but heat hammered knees. Second sphere followed. She dodged, leaving crater of melting tar. The red priestess's shadow lengthened monstrous behind her, twisting into antlers of flame. Shireen recognized weakness. Priests seldom guard the shadows cast by their own light. They believe light sovereign. She whispered, binding of reflection. Her own shadow detached, slid swift across blazing deck, latched onto the flaming antlers, grafting to priestess's silhouette. Melisandre gasped. For an instant fire flickered as her shadow warped into new geometry, an eclipse around her heart. Shireen pulled, trying to sever the link between light and flesh. But Melisandre's ruby at throat flared. shattering the bond. Shireen's shadow recoiled, bleeding sparks. Dock timbers groaned. Roof support collapsed between them, sending gout of sparks. Smoke blurred vision. Shireen tossed second circlet high. It spun, reflecting myriad flames. Each reflection created tiny annihilation points, pitting Firestorm with pockets of cold. Melisandre shielded face. Shireen used moment to retreat, binding Night to her feet, sprinting along charred quay into maze of warehouses. She moved through alleys thick with soot, Circlet's core still cool, but energy near spent. Behind, Melisandre's voice rose in prayer. Flames licked rooftops anew. She must flee Old Town tonight. She dashed toward Maester's gate. Crowds panicked, but watchers saw a veiled girl bearing silver circlet and parted, sensing something fearsome. At the Honeywine's edge, a lone skiff bobbed. She leapt aboard, severed docking rope with obsidian dagger, unfurled tattered sail. Tide carried her downriver, past reeds flickering with firelight. Behind, the high tower's beacon glimmered through smoke like star fighting eclipse. She felt heartbreak leaving books, mentors, but survival overshadowed. By dawn, she reached open sea. Soot-streaked, eyelids gritty, she steered south along coast, aiming for Shield Islands where currents would sweep her west past Storm's End. She intended rendezvous with Davos at Lys or beyond. But first she must rest. She wedged tiller, curled under sailcloth. Waves rocked. Exhaustion dragged her into dream. She stood on Dragonstone beach of childhood, but sky bled red. Her father called, yet shadow swallowed his voice. Melisandre stood beside him, gesturing toward pyre where a girl of stone and night knelt. Shireen realized that girl was both herself and not. Scales covered entire face, eyes burning blue-black. The pyre was unlit. The girl raised hand, conjuring flame and darkness entwined. Shadow fire, cold and hot. The priestess recoiled. Father watched, uncertain. Shireen woke, heart hammering. The sun climbed. Spray cooled her cheeks. She glimpsed her reflection in the water. Stone patch unchanged, but eyes looked older, flint-sharp, carrying night's glimmer. She whispered, "I am neither pyre's prisoner nor priestess's pawn. I am Shireen, forged of shadows and storms." She set course anew, not south but east-southeast toward the island of Tarth, Sapphire Isle, homeland of Brienne the Bold. There, fishermen loyal to Stormlands might hide her, perhaps connect to Davos. She would refine Nightclasp, seek Valyrian glass, and fashion Shadowfire, melding flame and night under her own will. She thought of the prophecy's words, Lightbringer. Perhaps true salvation lay not in extinguishing fire, but in wedding it to dark so neither consumed the world alone. Wind filled sail. Skiff glided, a blade across cobalt. Seagulls cawed overhead like heralds of journeys yet uncharted. Battles etched in dusk. Shireen Baratheon, Selene Waters, Shadowbinder, scholar, fugitive, pioneer, smiled at horizon's thin silver. 5 hours of voyage stretched ahead, but her story's next arc had just unfurled. Somewhere, dragons roared, priests schemed, smuggler wept. She would meet them on her terms, circlet of mirrors upon brow, shadows dancing at her heels like loyal hounds. And when the final flame sought to devour night, she would stand between, forging dawn anew. Dawn broke over the Sapphire Isle like pale silk drawn across a blade, tinting every wave that lapped the strand a shimmering cobalt. Shireen guided the skiff onto a pebbled spit north of Evenfall Hall, grounding the keel with a gentle crunch. Silence lay thick save for lazy gull cries. Far inland, the banner of House Tarth, quarterly azure and rose, fluttered atop a squat watchtower, half veiled by mist. She pulled her cloak tight, hefted satchel and shield, then whispered thanks to the skiff's faithful planks before setting foot upon land she had never walked yet felt curiously familiar, for her mother had sung her lullabies of the gem that crowns the narrow sea. She followed a goat trail corkscrewing through heath scented of salt violet and thyme. Progress was slow. Each rise revealed sweeping vistas of jagged cliffs gnawed by tides, but also vantage points where patrol eyes might pick her out. Near noon, she reached a copse of wind-stunted ash and paused to rest, pulling bread crust from satchel. While she ate, she unfolded Marwyn's treatise, rereading passages on dragonglass resonance and margins where she had scrawled equations for night-class berets. She needed material sharper than quartz, real dragonglass shards, ideally forged with Valyrian steel veins, if she hoped to fashion a weapon stout enough to break a red priestess's ruby focus or quench a wyvern's breath. Dragonstone's tunnels housed islands of vitrified magma, but covert recovery seemed nigh impossible. Yet Tartha's caves, rumor claimed, held pockets of obsidian dredged from the earth by forces forgotten. As a girl, she had begged Davos for tales of the Glass of Midnight. He had laughed, swearing smuggler friends used shards as exotic trinkets for gullible Bravosi courtiers. Hope flickered. She folded treatise, shouldered gear, and pressed south toward a limestone bluff whose belly carved into caverns. Twilight found her on a ledge overlooking a cove where sapphire-hued water churned against basalt teeth. A narrow fissure yawned behind falls of dripping fern. She crawled within, torch stub sputtering. Moist air turned chill. Walls shimmered with mica. Deeper, the tunnel widened into a vaulted chamber where stalagmites rose like the ribs of a fossil leviathan. And there, half-buried beneath slick moss, a scatter of black glass glinted, edges razor-keen. She knelt, heart hammering, and pried free the largest. A curved blade-shaped shard the length of her forearm, veined faintly with red crystal. It hummed at her touch, singing on some frequency too low for ears yet high enough for bone. She felt night-clasp sigils in her memory stir like sleepers hearing a knock. She gathered 3 more shards, wrapped them in oilcloth. When she turned, her torch haloed a silhouette, broad-shouldered, armored, sword drawn. In an iron voice, the figure commanded, "Step away from the relics." Shireen raised free hand, shadows pooling automatically. The stranger lowered blade fractionally at the sight of her veiled face. "Who are you?" the voice asked, firm yet not cruel. Light shifted. Shireen glimpsed polished blue steel and a sigil of a golden lily etched on the pauldron. Recognition jolted. Brienne of Tarth, daughter of Lord Selwyn, renowned for oath-keeping and unflinching honor. Stories spoke of her service to Lady Catelyn Stark, her duel for Jaime Lannister, her search for Sansa. That search had ended. Where? Rumors varied, but Shireen sensed Brienne's legend still walked. "I'm a traveler," Shireen said, pitching voice low, masking Stormlander lilt. "I gather only what the cave yields." "These shards are patrimony of House Tarth," Brienne answered. "Used long ago against raiders. I guard them." "Your father's realm extends to all guests?" Shireen countered gently. "I mean no theft, only exchange." She produced a silver dragon, placed it on a ledge. Brienne's gaze narrowed. "Coin cannot buy relics," she said, then softer. "Yet you carry no pick nor rope. Why crawl alone into this bone house at dusk?" Shireen weighed honesty. Brienne's reputation suggested a soul immune to priestly zeal, but mention of shadowbinding might provoke sword. She chose half-truth. "I search for means to defend against fire," she said. "Iron melts, but obsidian drinks flame. I would craft shields." Brienne studied her, noting grayscale patch, weariness, night-clasp circlet at belt. Something in Brienne's blue eyes softened. Perhaps memory of a Shireen she once met at Renly's war camp years back. A shy girl feeding a lonely warrior soup. The realization flickered across Brienne's face. Her sword lowered. "Princess," she whispered. "It cannot." Shireen's hood slipped, grayscale catching torchlight. Recognition settled. Brienne sheathed Oathkeeper with a rasp of respectful surprise. "The realm believed you burned. I wept at the tale, child." "I was stolen from the pyre," Shireen murmured, "and forged anew." Brienne knelt. Shireen's breath hitched. Such homage felt surreal. She touched Brienne's pauldron. "Rise. I am no queen, only wanderer." Brienne stood, shoulders squared. "Then know you stand friendless no longer. Evenfall offers sanctuary." She gestured to shards. "Take what you need. I'll answer to my lord father." Relief crashed like surf. They left the cavern together, Brienne guiding along hidden goat paths. Night spread velvet across silver sea. Stars crowded horizon. On approach to evenfall, sentries hailed. Brienne spoke code phrase. Gates opened into courtyard fragrant with orange blossom, though frost crept edges. Stable hands led mounts away as small folk gaped at cloaked newcomer. Lord Selwyn Tarth, broad, kind-eyed though aging, met them in torchlight. Upon hearing identity, he fell to knee until Shireen begged him rise. She recounted a bridged saga, escape, ass-high pursuit, omitting lethal details of shadowcraft. Selwyn listened, beard trembling with rage at Stannis's rumored sacrifice. He pledged the Isle's secrecy. Servants led her to chamber of high windows overlooking moonlit waves. A tub awaited, steam curling. She sank beneath floral-scented water, scrubbing soot and salt from hair. Scales on cheek tingled but did not ache. After, in linen gown, she studied herself in polished bronze. Eyes rimmed with sleepless nights, but spark inside bright. She bound hair into simple braid, then laid shards on writing desk, mapping night clasp channels with chalk. A rap at door. Brienne entered carrying tray of honeyed goat's milk and oatcakes. They sat by hearth, crackle filling silences. Brienne spoke of wars, how she had found Sansa, brought her north only to witness Bolton horrors, how she slew Ramsay in single combat after rescuing Theon, how she and Davos had later traveled together seeking allies for Jon Snow, now king in the north by acclaim of freed Northmen and wildlings. Davos parted ways in White Harbor after rumors of Shireen's survival reached him. He had sailed to search coastal towns for word. Shireen listened, heart aching at fatherless homeland but proud of brothers at arms. Brienne finished. If Davos still scours ports, a raven from Tarth could reach him. But we must write in code. Shireen agreed. She drafted message using Davos's cipher, instructing him to sail for Shipbreaker Bay's hidden cove known as Salmon Run on first full moon of winter. Brienne sealed with Tarth wax. Next days, Shireen explored Evenfall's libraries, poring over ship manifests noting dragonglass shipments from Dragonstone centuries prior. A pattern surfaced. Storms dislodged glass from volcano slopes, depositing along Tarth shores. Local smiths once folded slivers into fishhooks rumored to pierce scales of deep-sea leviathans. She requested forge access. Selwyn consented. The forge crouched at seawall, bellows rusted but serviceable. Shireen stoked charcoal, placed anvil of star steel to hold heat. She assembled a prototype, obsidian blade set within silver lattice engraved with night clasp spirals. Hammering obsidian risked shatter. She used low heat and leather-wrapped mallet, shaping gradually. Brienne watched, assisting at tongs. Sparks flew black, absorbing into gloom. The blade emerged curved like falcon's talon, edge translucent red. They tested at dusk. Brienne lit brazier. Flames danced. Shireen whispered activation. Sigils pulsed. Blade drank fire. Tongues curved inward, vanished. Heat rushed up hilt but dissipated. Brienne's eyes widened. She touched edge, it chilled. Shadowfire, Shireen named it. Weapon that converts flame to cold void for heartbeat before releasing as harmless mist. Next step, embed in circlet or gauntlet. Winter's first full moon neared. Shireen trained daily with Brienne, learning stance, footwork. She blended martial moves with shadow feints, casting small illusions to wrong-foot opponent. Brienne marveled yet cautioned. Over-reliance on sorcery invites complacency. Shireen respected the lesson. On eve of voyage to Salmon Run, scouts blinked signal lights from Watchtower. Sails sighted to northwest red. Panic fluttered among garrison. Melisandre's fireships had traced Shireen again. Selwyn ordered beacon lit. Brienne marshaled archers. Shireen assessed. 3 galleys, wind at back, arrival by dawn. Evenfall's modest scorpions scarce deterrence. Yet cliffs offered vantage. She devised plan with Brienne. Lure galleys into narrow fjord south of Isle where cliffs overhang. She would climb ridge, deploy night-clasp mirrors to quench sails' oil fire charges. then collapse cliff face using shadow bindings amplified by dragonglass resonance, sealing fjord. Night prior, she climbed Sea Razor Cliff with rope, accompanied by nimble Squire Hyle. Winds howled, salt spray sheeted. At ridge apex, she anchored mirror arrays, polished shields positioned in star formation, alignment calculated to converge reflections at fjord throat. She hammered iron stakes, chanting soft. Then she inscribed dragonglass blade with focusing sigils, embedding slivers into cracks of cliff. Pre-dawn gloom cloaked sea in pewter. Galleys turned into channel, rowers' chant echoing. Brienne's archers loosed arrows tipped with pitch. Flames splashed across hulls, drawing priests to rails to counter with their own fire conjure. Meanwhile, Shireen triggered mirrors. Each reflected faint first light into concentrated beams striking rigging soaked now in oil from arrow fires. Flames roared, then collapsed to black ash where nightclasp lenses sucked heat. Confusion seized enemy. Sails sagged, oars lost rhythm. Shireen cut palm, pressed blood onto sigilled blade lodged in rock. She whispered deepest binding 13th. One she had scarcely practiced for cost was steep. It demanded peace of memory dear. She offered memory of lullaby sung by mother, last she could recall. Pain-seared heart. Shadows surged into veins of cliff, cracking stone. A rumble shook earth. She scrambled back as tons of limestone sheared off, crashing onto lead galley. Water exploded skyward. Second galley rammed wreckage, splintering. Third reversed oars, but tide sucked debris under hull, crushing keel. Flames snuffed by spray. Priest screamed. From Evenfall's wall, cheers rose. Shireen collapsed to knees, tears unbidden for lullaby lost. Hyle helped her descend rope. Keep. Brienne clasped her forearms. You saved Isle, she said, awe tempered by concern at Shireen's pallor. Shireen confessed price, memory traded. Brienne, eyes glassy, vowed they would write new song to fill wound. Raven's departing wreck likely carried word of defeat to Dragonstone. Time dwindled before next strike. Selwyn arranged swift ship, the Sea Swift, to ferry Brienne and Shireen to Salmon Run rendezvous. They sailed in moonlight, hugging coast cliffs. Storms tossed, but Sea Swift lived up to name. At Salmon Run, a crescent cove masked by dunes, they found Davos waiting aboard Candle in the wind, lantern hooded. The reunion stilled breath. Davos leapt to shore, falling to knees, head bowed. Shireen lifted him. They embraced, tears mingling. My little princess grown into storm, he whispered hoarsely. Brienne watched, soft smile. They convened under cliff shelf. Davos recounted. Melisandre commanded fleet to retrieve Shireen, for blood of king and key of prophecy. After Evenfall loss, she would marshal Dragonstone's last cannons of wildfire. But rumors swirl that Daenerys Targaryen's dragons near Blackwater Bay, making Volcanic Isle contested. Opportunity. Infiltrate in chaos, steal glass candles, sabotage Red Woman's gems, end hunt. Davos revealed Old Smuggler's tunnel beneath Dragonstone's seaward side, mapped in his mind. Brienne volunteered as guard. Shireen, wielding Shadowfire blade and Nightclasp circlet, would slip through tunnels, reach chamber of the painted table where Red Woman kept scrying flames. They would douse them forever. 3 nights later, candle in the wind drifted radar quiet, sails darkened, into coves beneath Dragonstone's obsidian ridges. Rain pelted decks, muffling sound. Davos guided to Kelpchoke Channel, dropped anchor near cave mouth. Shireen, Davos, Brienne descended into skiff, rowing into darkness. Torches remained unlit. Shireen summoned faint ghost light, enough to outline slick walls carved by lava tubes. Bats fluttered. Tunnels sloped upward to stone stair forgotten by patrols. Crest, iron grate barred exit. Rust parted at Shireen's blade. They entered courtyard behind granaries. Yard deserted by war's toll. Across Bailey, glow pulsed from Lord's Tower, Melisandre's sanctum. Shireen felt ruby heartbeat even here. They waited under eve as patrol clanked by, muttering of storm god's anger. When silence resumed, Shireen slipped ahead, shadows hugging feet, guiding Davos and Brienne to postern door once used by serving girls. Up spiral, breaths shallow, they reached corridor lined with grotesque dragon gargoyles. Chamber entrance guarded by 2 queen's men, soldiers of R'hllor, spears crossed. Shireen touched circlet. Mirrors rotated, casting illusion of empty hallway. She advanced unseen, pressed palms to soldiers' shadows. She murmured sleep charm. Men sagged, slumping silently. Inside, painted table flickered under braziers. Atop map sprawled conflagration of orange-red flame rising from obsidian bowl. Melisandre stood before it, arms raised. Cloak billowed, hair glinted copper. Beside her, second priest Thuras of Myr and a gaunt knight in crown antler helm. Gendry Baratheon, legitimized, bound by spell. Melisandre's voice rang, "Lord of light, guide your sword of dawn. Let shadow of stone be consumed, so prince shall rise." Gendry, dazed, stepped forward towards smaller brazier where blade glowed. Lightbringer forging? Shireen acted. She flung shadow net across room, ensnaring flames, dimming. Fire writhed angrily, yet ruby flared bright, repelling net.
Melisandre spun.
Eyes locked on Shireen's veiled figure now revealed. "Daughter of Storm, you came to your destiny. Destiny is written by those who dare write," Shireen replied. She drew shadowfire. Blade drank brazier's tongues, shriveling them. Thuras gaped. Melisandre hissed an incantation. Fire sprang from ruby, streaming serpent-like. Shireen crossed blade and circlet mirror. Flame struck, split into twin curls that died as soot. She advanced. Melisandre backpedaled to bowl, chanting deeper. Shadows peeled from walls, living silhouettes shaped like hounds. Brienne charged, Oathkeeper flashing, cleaving first beast. Its smoke-healed wound lunged again. Brienne cursed. Shireen recalled Kaith's warning. Each binding cost soul. But here final forging awaited. She whispered forgotten lullaby's tune, the one she surrendered, and pain echoed emptiness, fueling power. She extended left hand, launching her own shadow which split into 7 shards forming whirl of blades. They sliced through smoked hounds, scattering them like ash. Gendry stumbled free of trance, clutched head. Davos dragged him to cover. Thuras attempted flame whip. Circlet mirror redirected lash into ceiling, igniting tapestries. Melisandre cried, summoning column of pure white heat. Shireen raised dragonglass blade. Resonance sang, absorbing column until blade glowed crimson. Obsidian fissured, exposing core of liquid night. She thrust blade point first into bowl of flame. Impact thundered. Bowl shattered. Shock wave of cold burst across chamber, quenching every fire at once. Darkness swallowed. In that utter dark, only Shireen's eyes saw, trained by shadow. She surged, grasped ruby at priestess's throat, yanked free. Melisandre shrieked, clutching neck. Shireen hurled gem into Oathkeeper's path. Brienne swung, cleaving jewel. Ruby exploded into sparks and smoke. Melisandre collapsed, skin paling, centuries of glamour dissolving to reveal withered crone. She whispered, "Night wins nothing, only delays." Then fell, lifeless. Torches sputtered back to life of their own, ordinary fire, harmless. Thuras knelt, surrendering. Shireen sheathed broken dragonglass hilt, feeling hollowness where power drained. Outside, horns blared. Daenerys's fleet ringed harbor, dragons shrieking overhead. Flaming projectiles burst against ramparts. Chaos perfect for escape. Davos guided group down postern, leading freed garrison men in flight toward Hidden Cove. Gendry, shaken, swore fealty to Shireen for saving soul. She smiled faintly, telling he owed himself first. They rode through tunnels as thrum of dragon wings echoed. A candle in the wind, sails unfurled towards morning horizon. Behind, Dragonstone's towers glowed red under dragonfire but also new dawn. On deck, Shireen leaned against gunwale, watch sea turn rose. Brienne joined, resting gauntlet on rail. You ended her, she said. I ended a path, Shireen answered, opening palm where grayscale patch now tingled warm. Many lights and shadows remain. I will forge balance. Davos approached with steaming tea. Where to, my lady? North, she said after breath. To Winterfell, Jon Snow must hear we halted priestess. The long night still looms, but I no longer fear flames. We will weave blade of night and day together. Gendry hammered makeshift oars amidships, singing old Stormland tune. Brienne closed eyes, humming along. Shireen listened, letting melody fill loss of mother's lullaby with new song born of friendship and ash. Wind freshened. Candle in the wind carved froth, bearing them toward yet unwritten chapters, where Shadowbinder would stand at dawn's edge, neither consumed by fire nor lost to night, but shining with her own tempered gleam. And the world would learn that a girl once marked for burning had become the smith of its brightest hope, forged in the crucible of darkness and carried forward on wings of storm and shadowfire.